about 500 bucks from a YouTube video, he'll take the ads off and be like, oh well, you don't really care though. You're just doing it for attention, bro. Look, man, I almost died like a week ago, bro. For real, bruh. I'm up in my car right now. I'm ready to die.
Hi, I'm Zack. Welcome to Sad Ass.
You know what that feels like? And then people are saying online that shit is fake.
Faking that someone died is pretty bad.
Bro, you can't tell the difference between my regular video and this shit.
Death is cruel, death is saddening, but death is inevitable. As long as life has existed, so too has death. And as long as death has existed, so too has our fascination with it. We have funerals to remember lost ones, but death is also hugely influential on the arts. Music, films, books, paintings, photography, sculpting. Death is incredibly moving and it drives us to create. The news is 90% death. It's in our education system with subjects like biology and philosophy, and with all this in mind, today we'll be looking at the various effects of death on YouTube.
That has longevity that the worst thing would be to
This is Andrew Miller. He's a film student, he's an American, and he's an avid user of the platform. You may have seen him pop up briefly in one of my videos, and he also creates his own content. He creates highly entertaining commentary videos, as well as more insightful pieces such as his review on Noel Miller's short film, Suki. He also has some hilarious comedy sketches. Despite the quality of his content, there is one fundamental flaw with his channel. He has just over 100 subscribers. Now hypothetically speaking, if Andrew were to kick the bucket tomorrow, what would happen? What outcome would befall his channel, his videos, and how would it impact the wider YouTube community? Keep in mind there's 2 billion current users on YouTube. The answer? Nothing. Nothing at all. Of course, I would care, and I'm sure his subscribers would too, if we ever found out, which we probably wouldn't. The vast majority of users would be none the wiser, and this applies across the board. The majority of users with a lack of a following will perish without anyone noticing. Well, not exactly. It's hard to find the numbers and information on user deaths on YouTube, but we can infer their impact from other social media sites. Facebook, for example, is predicted to have on average 10,000 user deaths a day, and 428 die every hour. So that is 3,750,000 deaths a year. This number is astronomical, and considering the user base is at just over 2 billion on Facebook, there's a clear issue. One day the dead will outnumber the living. This isn't likely to happen for another 50 to 100 years, but considering the vast number of deaths occurring on that site, how many friend requests have been sent to the dead? How many dead people have been tagged in a photo? How many have been wished a happy birthday? I presume the question in your mind right now is how does this relate to YouTube? And that's simple really. Facebook has just over 2 billion users, and so too does YouTube. It's impossible to know the exact numbers, but we can infer from Facebook's death count that YouTube's yearly death rate is in the millions. This should have some pretty radical effects. For example, in 100 years' time, any video existing today will have a graveyard of witty banter, insightfulness, and harsh words in the comment section from the dead. But YouTube is combating this inevitability. You can currently submit requests to gain access to a deceased user, and you can also set up your own account for your death with the Inactivity Account Manager. Is this enough though? Is this even something that needs addressing? Time will tell. But one thing is for sure, comments aren't the only thing the dead leave behind. This is Turkey Tom. Tom is a reasonably successful creator, currently sitting at around 125,000 subscribers. He's currently creating quality commentary videos which I very much enjoy, but at the same time have also been quite controversial.
The YouTuber Turkey Tom threw a bunch of anti-Semitic imagery in his latest video, and it resulted in a comment section full of anti-Semitism.
His videos along with other antics have resulted in a small minority of people hating him. I doubt they would actually want him to die though. But what if he did? Contrary to Andrew, Tom's absence would impact YouTube to a certain degree. His fans would be asking questions as to where he disappeared to. He is connected to quite a lot of other high profile YouTubers. His real life death would likely be discovered, mourned and discussed on social media, YouTube and all over the place. One place you'd see this the most would be on Tom's channel itself. You'd see comments of remembrance and nostalgia, and the videos themselves would act as a tool for the fans to reminisce about Tom. The channel itself could almost act as a shrine to a YouTuber, and this really calls into question the morality of tampering with these channels once a creator has passed. Simply removing his channel would result in the hard work of Tom being ripped away from us, and would accelerate the eventual memory of his channel being forgotten. But there certainly are moral ways to tamper with a dead creator's channel. One creator death that personally affected me was that of Total Biscuit. In May 2018, Total Biscuit lost his battle with cancer. He was a game critic on YouTube and ran a podcast with Jesse Cox and Dodger. On the podcast, they would usually have a guest and discuss video games among other things. After Total Biscuit's passing, the podcast was continued on his channel, hosted by his wife Jenna Bain, and occasionally Jesse too. The podcast continued for a couple of months before moving to Jenna's personal channel. Everything that has occurred here has felt morally just. It's all in good faith, fans of the podcast reacted positively, and there's been great respect paid to Total Biscuit, and that's to be expected. This is his wife after all, but respect to the dead is a much more complex matter than you'd first expect.
All right, so again, what I've been asking us to think about are various aspects of death that might contribute to either increase or perhaps in certain ways reduce somewhat the badness of death. There's one more aspect that I want to take a couple of minutes and have us think about, and that's this.
Bro, you can't tell the difference between my regular video and this shit.
This is IAreZack. If you follow my channel, you've probably seen him pop up every now and again. More likely, however, is that you may have seen him from his successful comedy series Sadass. In this series, Zack opens the sketch with a Jackass film style intro, and then proceeds to try and kill himself. Obviously it's fake, and obviously it's for humour, but I can imagine some people would have an issue with humour including suicide. But if you value comedians being able to joke about anything, you'd at the very least tolerate Sadass's existence. I for one think that this is absolutely fine and no different to what you see in films or TV. This sets an important precedent though. Using the concept of death for an acted out scene or for comedy is completely fine. As previously mentioned, death is used in many art forms, and this should be allowed to occur on YouTube. But if performances involving death are acceptable, why do people hate Jaystation? Well, it's really quite simple. He has exploited real-life deaths for views by pretending to communicate to dead celebrities through a Ouija board. He's also faked people's deaths, and made a video exploiting the Logan Paul suicide forest controversy by pretending to go himself. For me though, the Ouija board videos are the worst because it exploits a very clearly identified person. But more importantly, Jaystation attempts to make these seem real. And that's probably the main distinction here. He is manipulating a young audience to believe this Ouija board nonsense is real. And if you think Jaystation is the only one doing this, you'd be very, very wrong. Recently, one of basketball's greatest ever players, Kobe Bryant, tragically passed away in a helicopter accident. This was all over the news due to its tragic nature. All of the sadness this created for millions of people led to even the smallest of YouTube channels having a prime dead celebrity to milk for exposure. He's pretending to text Kobe, who's telling him he's faked his own death. This is wrong on so many levels, and it's not really groundbreaking for me to say that this type of content is horrific. Therefore, both of these types of content could be put on opposite ends of a spectrum in terms of the morality of using death in videos, and their positions are due to a variety of reasons. But what exists in the middle? Well, what about commentary videos discussing how bad all these fake dead communications are? Obviously their message is good, but they're almost an extra link of exploitation. They exploit the ones exploiting death for views and money. Does that count as exploiting the dead? You could argue that content that merely reports on death is gaining a lot of viewership and revenue, but the moral basis to oppose this content would probably apply to morally objecting to the news. I don't think many people would, but if you do morally object to the news in all its forms, then I don't really know what to say to you. What's the alternative? We just ignore people's death entirely? What about this very video? I've already used both Total Biscuit and Kobe Bryant to emphasize points in a redundant video essay that'll probably garner 300 views. But does that even matter? If this video gets 300 views, I'll get around 20p for it and 1 sub, so it's not a real significant exploitation. But what if it gets 1 million views? Does the moral basis of using dead people in a video rely solely on how many views it gets? That cannot be the case. That sounds so wrong. Or is it? What about pretending to die? Last year, Extreme Games uploaded a video saying they were going to quit YouTube because they were dying. This blatantly manipulates young fans. It wasn't true, and can you imagine how upset a child would be if they thought their favourite YouTuber was going to die? Oh wait, We don't have to imagine. Jake Paul uploaded a video of himself being kidnapped and countless children believed this crap and were devastated by it. Imagine if he just came out and said he was dying. Kids would probably be pretty upset, wouldn't they? With all this in mind, where is the cutoff point for acceptable content about death? What is acceptable? To determine this, let's look at past precedents set by YouTube themselves. What do they deem acceptable?
I think it's fair to say I am at the lowest point in my life. To have had so much success in a field that I always dreamed of being in, and to have it stripped away so fast, it's hard to get over it.
Well, at the end of 2018, popular YouTuber Monkey Jones was permanently banned. He was striked 6 times on 2 accounts, all at the same time. All of his strikes came from his content on Elliot Rodgers. Elliot Rodgers infamously murdered 6 people while being hailed by a very small minority as being an incel hero due to his recordings discussing his bitterness towards women. Monkey Jones mocked him and ripped his ideology to shreds. Monkey created content mocking a killer and refuting concepts that attempted to justify murder, and he was banned for it. Clearly YouTube were not happy with this at all, due to how vicious the whole banning procedure was. From 0 strikes to a permanent ban in an instant, with almost no help or information given. So now we have our example, which is probably the most high profile case of someone's ban being related to death. So all we have to do is determine where Monkey's content lies on the spectrum of morality and content about death. I think I'm going to put him right here. I hope you can see the absolute hilarity at Monkey being banned while Jaystation is allowed to continue. It's insanity, but here's the thing. I do not want Jaystation to be banned.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
I have always been a huge advocate for a Wild West approach to content allowed on this platform. For every Nerd City, there should be a Jake Paul. For every Tom Scott video teaching you something new, there should be a video of a kid doing something incredibly stupid.
Don't jump. You'll hurt yourself.
And I think in the case of Jaystation, this should apply too. In a public space, if you do something bad, you're going to be told by the people around you. And you'll think, I probably shouldn't do that anymore, and you'll learn from your mistakes. Now Jay does not seem like the sharpest tool in the shed, so public learning probably goes out the window for him. But if you keep commenting and upvoting negative comments about him on his videos, then a minority of his young audience will investigate, and they are bound to find one of the countless videos outlining exactly what he's done wrong. Now some of these kids won't understand and leave stupid comments on those videos, but the older and more intelligent will get it. As Jay's audience grows up, more and more of them will understand that what he's doing is wrong, and he'll be forced to stop or fade into obscurity. I do think we do a decent job of policing ourselves on YouTube, and I'd much rather this solution, over creators who have done nothing wrong being banned in the crossfire. To be clear, I think Jaystation should not be banned because I do not trust YouTube to police their site correctly. I think YouTube should step back in most cases. I do think, however, there is one type of death-related content YouTube should be policing.
Wanna watch people die?
This is Gokunaru. In his recent video entitled YouTube's Dirty Little Secret, he discussed videos of real-life deaths being uploaded and available on YouTube. In his video, Gokunaru singled out LiveLeak, and guess what? It's still there. Lots of uploads of death, and you can find so much more if you're willing to dig. This isn't exclusive to YouTube either. A subreddit called Watch People Die has been around since 2012, amassing 20,000 followers, until early 2019 when it was banned for sharing the infamous New Zealand massacre. I've decided not to talk about the morality of this. For starters, there are people that actually quite enjoy this type of content.
And then LiveLeak just... I get real full off that shit fast though, like...
Yeah, because it's disturbing.
You know, different of opinion.
What is disturbing? What is the most disturbing video you've seen?
I thought I'm gonna get his head cut off, and that shit was wild.
Yeah, that's LiveLeak. That
shit was wild because it was so funny until the head started hanging.
It was so funny.
Christ.
Now, I personally don't like this type of content for obvious reasons. However, I think there is a more important point to be made. When Susan Wojcicki looks at this spectrum, she won't care about the morality of what's been created, but instead will look at how it affects YouTube's image and coincidentally YouTube's monetary bottom line. If you look at the more morally acceptable channels, each one has been hit in some way. What this all means for videos showing people dying is that Susan needs to reevaluate YouTube's treatment of these types of videos. However, right now she probably doesn't give a shit because the law on videos online showing death is non-existent and hasn't been tested in court. Even the big news outlets are regulated by company policy and public outcry. But a law will come, and with the rise of the digital age, where people can view and share anything, this will be tested in a court of law, probably way before any official act can be created. When it is, who's most likely to be tried on videos about death? It's YouTube. And when a court of law has no act to pull from, they will look to precedents from previous cases. The right to publicity is the right a human has to control their own image in terms of commercial gain. You can take someone's picture, but the photographer or filmer cannot distribute their image without consent. This is why sometimes you'll see blurred out faces in certain TV shows. But the question is, what happens if someone dies? Do they keep the right to publicity? And the answer is, sometimes? Marilyn Monroe lost her right to publicity in 2008 in a California court case, but that was because the right to publicity was not held in New York, which was her place of residence during her death. However, California does provide what is known as the post-mortem right for up to 70 years after death, which is interesting because that is where YouTube is based. It also doesn't currently exist in the UK, however it does exist in 23 states in the US, where typically the post-mortem right will be extended by 100 years, or more commonly it is inherited by a person's family. A wife, a husband, a child, they obtain a dead person's right to control how their image is used commercially. No one has tested the area of actually showing a death in a court of law, but this will happen one day. Someone is going to find their loved one's final moments on YouTube and sue the ever-living shit out of them. And if they're in the right location, they should win. Advertisers are not going to want to be associated with a site in the limelight over showing countless dying breaths. And I know what you're thinking, these videos break the guidelines, they won't be monetized. And I think that's a silly thought because we've already discussed how ridiculously random YouTube enforces its own policies. And even when the policies are enforced correctly, these channels just ask for donations anyway. It's still commercial gain. And that's all that matters in the end, because in a court of law, commercial gain is all they'll care about. Thank you for watching my video taking a holistic look at the effects of death on YouTube. I know there are a couple other topics I could have talked about briefly, but this video was getting quite long and it was getting very difficult to make. If you've got any opinions about anything I've talked about today, let me know in the comments. And also let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this, because this is very different to anything I've ever done, and it's probably the most challenging video I have ever made. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.